we have to
Yes.
publicly disclose it to everybody so that the community knows.
Okay,
that-
perfect. Thank you. Okay, we're ready? Okay.
So, the old password.
Yeah, that's right.
Good evening. Thank you again for your patience as we get situated here. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:08. And today we're going to start off just by identifying that Miss Beverly Pangarelli is commuting in via technology. She has taken care of Mr. Pangarelli, or Dr. Pangarelli. So she is part of this conversation. Going forward, we're going to start off with a moment of silence, specifically special dedication to all those impacted by the tragedy that took place in Florida for today. So please pause for a moment of silence and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We are going to start off with recognitions, staff recognitions. Ms. Danielle Airy.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening. Does it sound like it's on? No. President Seah Martinez, members of the board, interim superintendent, Mrs. Pallas Thompson. Welcome, and thank you for having me this evening to once again highlight for you one of our incredible and dedicated staff members in the Peoria Unified School District. Tonight we will be honoring Mr. Lyman Akers. He is a wonderful and very well-known drama teacher from Ironwood High School. He also oversees the performing arts component for the International Baccalaureate program on campus. And I'm going to read from this because I don't want to get it wrong. The statistic is so overwhelming for you to know. He has been a dedicated staff member in our district for 31 years, and in that time, he's put on more than 60 performances for approximately 25,000 attendees. Mr. Akers also spearheads a faculty show once a year as well as a summer theater program that reaches more than 5,000 students. So as you can see, his accomplishments, his achievements are many. We are so proud of him, but what we're particularly proud of and here to celebrate tonight is that we're not the only ones that think that his work is exceptional. He has been recognized on an even larger and grander scale and recently received the Teacher of the Year award at the AZ Thespian Festival. So tonight we've brought him here for you because we would like to congratulate him for this very well-deserved honor. If we could invite him up here to the microphone to join me, let's give him a big round of applause. Mr. Akers, and at this time I'll turn him over to our governing board members for any comments and congratulations.
Good evening. Mr. Sandoval, would you like to start us off?
First off, thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations.
My pleasure.
It's always an honor to be in front of individuals who do so much, for our youth. and how that impacts, the greater good of the community and certainly our society. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I was a drama kid in high school, so loved it. It was so great. I was never had a big role. I was always in the chorus, but loved
Good
it.
for you.
Great formative experiences. And so thank you for what you do. We think that arts are a major part of the success of the school district, and your program is a part of that. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Well, thank you. I love it.
And I'm sure.
Congratulations, and thank you so much for being a part of Peoria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I echo exactly what they said, and I do have a question for you.
Oh, boy.
Simple. So you spent a lot of time here in Peoria. What has kept you here?
I'm a really kind of a simple man. I believe that theater has the power to change the world one life at a time, and I love seeing that light bulb go off over kids' heads when they catch that vision also, and then they go out and do something spectacular. That's why I'm still here.
Well, thank you for sharing, and I believe we would all agree with you, so
Thank you.
enjoy your evening.
Kill this. Can I just say, I hope I'm not doing that. Am I? Lyman had, we brought him into our prospective administrators and aspiring administrators. We're not doing that. Yeah, you? Try it again. We brought Lyman in a couple weeks ago to our prospective administrator and aspiring administrators classes because he knew that interviews were going to be happening. And as he was working with them, one of the things that he taught them was when their hands are really cold and nervous, that they had to talk to the hands, right? So can you share with us a little bit how you talk to the hands?
Of course I can. So it goes like this. Sometimes your body betrays the anxiety that you're feeling, and it comes out. Perhaps your hands are cold, or perhaps your palms are sweaty. And I know as an actor that was a little bit embarrassing sometimes when I would pick up a prop and it would be slippery in my hands. So I realized I needed to have an intervention with my hands. And I read a really cool article about the fact that intrapersonal communication actually works. So you simply talk to your hands and you say something like, look, this is really embarrassing. Will you please stop perspiring all over everything? Open the dialogue in that way. And I did it by myself so that no one would be around to ridicule me afterwards. This hand seemed to get it immediately and said, yeah, gee, I'm sorry. And he dried up instantly. This hand was really kind of a punk about the whole thing. And he refused my reasonable request to stop perspiring. So I had to start yelling at it, and I really raised my voice. And you are embarrassed, stop it! And then it occurred to me, ooh, perhaps a challenge. So I simply challenged him. Go ahead, sweat now. Go ahead, bring it on. And he felt foolish and stopped. And my hands have not perspired since that moment. It's a technique that really does work.
And I have to say, it was great, as Steve and the team were interviewing prospective principals yesterday, you'd see them in the hallway talking to their hands. So that's what they were doing. Lyman, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and we are moving on to board recognitions 3.2. Mr. Sandoval.
Thank you for that. For me, it kind of is in line with the gentleman that we just recognized this evening. What we do as a district, to integrate, those other programs, that certainly inspire, our kids, from an art perspective, is certainly for me, as a board member, I'm proud that we're able to do that. Because this isn't common across, all the districts throughout our state. So our ability and truly our passion, to continue to drive the needs to add these types of programs that nurture the creativity of our kids and put them on a path of success. Is critical as they go throughout their college career and life. And our CTE programs, being we're in the midst of our CTE month. So Mr. Panzer, and certainly yes. And she works out of my gym. And, I forgot her name. So what I'm going to do now is talk to my hands and try to figure out which one it is. So anyway, those types of programs, certainly, it's proud for me as a member. It's proud for me as a parent to know that these are programs that are always top of mind to put our students in a position of success. So thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
Nothing this evening.
Ms.
I don't
Stone?
have anything.
And I would agree, in the sake of time, respecting everybody's, we will move on. And Mrs. Pangarelli shared with me as well, respecting everybody's time. So, going forward, number 4.1, study session, presentation and discussion of superintendent search consulting services per RFQ 78-18. I do want to say and acknowledge my governing board members for unanimously supporting the opportunity to discuss this. And so in this setting, please feel free to just speak, ask questions, no need to follow general formal procedures. And we are going to start off with introduction by Mr. Hicks of our first group.
Madam President, members of the board, Intern Superintendent, Ms. Pallas-Thompson. So as previously stated, this is the two finalists have come down, and so we've sent them questions. So hopefully you receive those questions or have those questions in front of you. They are to do about a 10 to 15 minute little presentation to hopefully address those conversations and still allow about 10 to 15 minutes for final questions, hopefully allow 30 minutes for each vendor presentation. And we have McPherson Jacobson up first. And so they're going to start off with their presentation and then allow a little dialogue with the board so that you guys are able to make the informed decision about which firm to go with.
Thank you very much.
Maybe we should dim the lights. No, I know. Oh, he has too.
And for the audience, as we are getting things finalized, we are Skyping, so great use of technology.
We're waiting for him to.
What are we waiting for?
For him to join, he's been sitting there waiting, and then for some reason, of course, he's 20 minutes or whatever.
Just a little reminder, you're getting some speak.
Oh, okay.
These all because everyone can't hear that.
Okay.
Whether it's true or not, nobody knows. And so just refrain from those type of comments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's on our drive-in. Hello, good evening. Thank you again for joining us. Just a moment. We're waiting for some audio.
This one's for you.
Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, there we go. Excellent. Thank you again for Skyping with us and taking the opportunity to answer our questions, and we look forward to learning more about McPherson.
Very good. Yes.
So at this time, let me just take a moment to introduce, we have Governing Board Member Mr. David Sandoval,
Hello, Mr. Sandoval.
Ms. Kathy Connect,
Hello?
Ms. Judy Doan.
Hi.
Mrs. Pangarelli is listening via audio, and then my name is Mrs. Seha Martinez.
Greetings, everyone. How would you like to proceed?
Start off with the questions that were provided by Mr. Hicks. So the governing board has sent over a list of questions to Mr. Hicks, and Mr. Hicks forwarded them over to you, condensed them, making sure that they aligned and grouped them together. So if you would like to start off with providing a 10-15 minute addressing the following questions. The first one is, what do you believe are the 3 most important characteristics that differentiate you from other superintendent search firms? What do you believe your firm does better than other search firms?
Okay, prepared for my response? Great, thank you very much. First of all, I have to tell you, I wish I was in Peoria tonight. And I woke up this morning in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, 4 inches of snow, 11 degrees. Kids tweeting me about we need to call school off, and I thought, I should be on a plane to Arizona. That would have made a lot more sense to me. So appreciate this opportunity very much. My name is Steve Joel. I've been with McPherson Jacobson for probably 2 decades. I've done a lot of searches. Most recently, Dysart, Arizona search. I led that search. We had a very successful search there. Prior to that, I did Tucson Sunnyside, which was a search a year or 2 ago, very successful as well. So what differentiates us? First of all, our retention rate and our longevity rate that we take great pride in. Many of our superintendents, most of our superintendents, stay between 5 and 10 years and longer. When you think about that, when you put that up against the lens of the national average, I will tell you that, urban superintendents, and urban could be 25,000 plus, is about 4.2 years. So we take great pride in the fact that our model, because it includes such a heavy emphasis on engagement, community stakeholder engagement, and staff engagement, really results in long-term buy-in. So our superintendents simply stay because it's a good match on the front end, and we work with boards of education and superintendents long after they begin the employment process. Secondly, we're national recruiters, and a district of your size, your location, is going to attract a national pool of candidates. As a practicing superintendent myself, very heavily networked and known nationally. In fact, I'm listed on the McPherson and Jacobson website as the national recruiter. It's primarily my job to make sure that everybody in America knows that there's an opportunity in Peoria, and to be able to describe that opportunity in quick terms. As most of you know, the superintendent search business is it's a recruiter's game today. Superintendents have a lot of opportunities. Very often, the one that you hire is not the one that's even thinking about a new job right now. And we find those folks through our extensive range of contacts. And that's primarily the work that I've done with the searches that I've been involved in. I get involved with a couple of searches every year, and most of them are of the larger variety. And I can just tell you, it's about telling your story, and it's about being able to duly vet people. And then third, I would say, is the personal touch that we give boards of education and board of trustees. And we just take great pride in that. So as your lead consultant, you'll be getting regular updates from me on progress. I'll be establishing contact with the point of contact that you designate in your district. A lot of times that's a superintendent, secretary, executive assistant, but more noticeably with the board president, just to let you know that things are in progress, if we're running into any snags, talk about meeting agendas. I'm pretty familiar with Arizona law now, having gone through DISART experience, so, I know what the do's and the don'ts are. And, I just think we put that personal touch to it, and we hear that time and time again, and I think if you call our references, they'll say that to you, that we take great pride in that. So, and then I'll just throw the fourth in. I think we vet candidates better than anybody. I mean, we just take great pride in not making any mistakes with the candidates that we vet, and we make sure that before we present them to you, they've let us know what baggage, if any, exists in their lives, because we read about around the country all the time, superintendents who get hired, and then within a week after employment, something emerges, and somebody wasn't told something, and that's an embarrassment to a lot of folks. So I gave you 4. I'm sorry, there's a longer list, but I happen to think we're a top 3 national firm, and we take great pride in the work that we do.
Thank you. Next question. Superintendents take on multidisciplinary roles in a school district, sometimes providing strategic guidance on curriculum, other times acting as chief operating officer, and always serving as a public relations specialist for the community. What key characteristic, in addition to leadership, does your search firm focus upon in identifying candidates, which it presents to a school governing board for hiring consideration?
Okay, so what we do is, honestly, you're going to set that, and then we're going to recruit and vet against your criteria. Our model, our phase 1 model, has us working with you in about a 3-hour workshop in which we use a nominal group technique, which is a way to collaboratively build consensus around what are you looking for today in your next superintendent. Each one of you is going to give us, as part of that exercise, probably a half a dozen traits and characteristics. We're going to pull them together, we're going to weight them out, we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to emerge there with the top 3 or 4 characteristics that you're looking for. So, giving you an example, you just mentioned those in terms of community connections, curriculum and instruction, managing the budget, leading the board. There's just, every district does it, there comes up with different sets of criteria. But whatever those 3 or 4 are, and they will be weighted, that's how we're going to recruit and ultimately vet your candidates. And that's what makes every search completely unique. So, again, you'll enjoy that exercise, because as a board, you'll come together and reach some consensus on what we're going to be looking for. And there aren't going to be any shocks or surprises, although I will tell you that every now and then I do a search where something emerges from a diverse group of folks that we weren't expecting, and we have to go out and try to find those candidates. And one that we recently had was a requirement of a PhD or an EDD, doctorate level credentials. Pretty rare, but not out of the ordinary. But we were able to find candidates that had an earned doctorate from a accredited university, which was a key point, by the way. So every district's different. That's what we'll do. And you'll tell us, is it community engagement? Is it internal, building internal capacity? Is it strategic planning? Is it, is it getting ready for bond referendum? I mean, what are the biggest things that you're looking for? Are you looking for personality? Are you looking for process? Are you looking for, somebody that's courageous and resilient, or, much more of a collaborative consensus builder because you don't have any issues that are facing your district? I mean, so I'm making a lot of these up, of course, but unique to you, they will be Peoria's skills, traits, and characteristics, and that's what we're going to find.
Thank you. Can you please provide a detailed breakdown of the background check that your firm will complete?
Yes. So we begin with, once we develop the criteria, we begin to accept applications. Everything comes through our office in Omaha, Nebraska. We have a full staff there. And then what we'll do is, once an application is completed, assuming that they have what we're looking for. And I have to tell you, in this business, there are an awful lot of folks that we call frequent flyers that are applying for every job in America. We don't spend a lot of time on those individuals, but we do spend time on those that we believe have the skills, traits, characteristics that your district is seeking. And then that starts with a phone call. And the phone call would be from me or one of the other consultants that we'll bring in to work with you. And we begin that process of, are they who they say they are? And let's talk about, what are you most proud of? You know, what are your strengths? Many of the superintendents in America have taken Strengths Finder or, you know, some other assessment of individual strengths. We'll talk through that. And then we'll begin a baseline. And then we'll collect all of the applications, and then we'll vet them against your criteria. And then, you know, we go to work on we go to work on checking the references. So what we like to say is that candidates will list references that they know will say good things about. But it's going to be our job to go deeper than that. So Tom Jacobson always tells us in training sessions, we try to go 3 deep. And so I might be talking to one of you about a reference, and I'll say, tell me about candidate X, and you'll say, oh, you know, very good things, and this and that. And I'll say, well, can you give me the name of 1 or 2 other people that I might be able to contact that would be willing to share some data and some feedback? We pick up a few more names. I also have to tell you that since we've done a lot of work in Arizona, we're pretty close to some of the association leaders. I personally know, I think virtually all of the large, more suburban and urban superintendents will be vetting names continuously. But I want you to know, before we present them to you, we will make sure that they are who they are, and I'll end every conversation with a prospective candidate with a very simple question. Did you tell me everything that I need to know before I go and meet at the work? And you'll be amazed at what we get in that very last response from candidates. Once you decide, and we'll work with you on this once we're brought in, we can do criminal background checks. We do those. I think 1 or 2 of them is included in the package proposal. We've had districts say, you know, if you're going to bring us 5 names, we want 5 criminal background checks on the front end. We're happy to do that. We will do video. All of our candidates now will produce about a 15-minute video that we'll bring to you if they're going to be one of the finalists that we think meet your criteria. You'll get a chance to kind of see them, different settings, centered on some very basic questions. Tell us why you're interested in this position. You know, what are your leadership strengths, those kinds of things too. So again, we take great pride. Every single search firm in America knows that if they make a mistake on a candidate, it's our reputation, it's your reputation, and certainly the candidate's reputation. So I will assure you that people who we bring will be duly vetted.
Thank you. Can you please describe instruments and tools that your firm uses to measure candidate characteristics that include, but are not limited to, student dedication, advocacy, community involvement, customer service, experience in bonds and override elections? So describe instruments.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, I apologize.
Just describe the instruments and tools used.
So we create a rubric for each one of our searches centered on those things that are deemed a necessity or experience. And when we do the vetting, and it begins with looking at their professional papers, we begin then to benchmark and to check off those kinds of things that they have experiences with. So when we work with you, it might be bond referendums, it might be strategic planning. I mentioned all those, I won't go through the list again. And then we'll make sure that they've had legitimate experiences with those kinds of skills and attributes. So we use an internal rubric, and that's something that we'll bring with us in that final presentation of finalist candidates. So yeah, I think that answers your questions. We don't use, we have the ability we have a partner company that will do personality profiles on each of the candidates. That is an extra. It's not very expensive. We've had a few districts that have asked us to produce that on the front end. And that's really, if you've gone through that in your own personal businesses, a lot of that is what are your skills and strengths matched up against certain situations. And some boards have found that to be very valuable, but it hasn't been a very popular add-on.
Thank you. And the last question that I have on the list, can you describe the marketing process and explain the level of involvement from district staff to help facilitate a successful process?
Okay, so marketing begins again with the development of the skills, traits, criteria. And then we'll move very quickly to establishing a brochure, which will be a description. It'll be unique. Hopefully you've got our proposal in front of you. Maybe they included an example or two in there that describes Peoria, tells a little bit about you, tells a little bit about your enrollment, anything else that you deem and your staff deem important for the messaging on this. We'll work with you on advertising. Our website gets 100,000 hits a month. ASSA, which is the American Association of School Administrators, is probably even more widely used than that. That's a very cheap advertising venue, a couple $100 for, I think, a month. Locally, I can't recall in Dysart if the School Board Association had a listing, but we'll find out what's available in your state for advertising. And then we'll work with each of your district staff to determine what other venues might we pursue. A lot of districts, it used to be much more popular than it is today, primarily because it's become very expensive, and that is Education Week. We get it in the field, and there are 2 or 3 jobs listed every week, but those are beginning to dry off. So people are using more of the web access, and the word will be out very, very quickly on this position. Your size, your location, your reputation. There's an opportunity here for real leadership. We'll message very, very quickly and very, very appropriately. I want to add, too, that in addition to getting the skills, traits, characteristics from you, when we come in as part of our phase 2, we're going to be visiting with all of your internal and external stakeholders, and you'll help us identify who those groups are. But these will be your business people, your parents, these will be your staff, your district office, your administrators, and we'll be able to get a pretty good handle on, what are people really thinking about living and working and sending their children to Peoria schools that'll help us develop this profile so that when we begin working with candidates, we're going to be completely honest with them about what are the great opportunities that exist in your district for leadership. What are the challenges that, and by the way, superintendents want challenges, and they want to come someplace where they can make a difference. And then third, what are the issues that a superintendent is going to hit head on upon arrival? And so we're going to be able to determine all of that. That's going to be part of our or developing a profile for the candidate. But even more importantly, what I have found in every district that I've done this work in, when we bring you that report, that's as good as anything you can commission an outside consulting agency to do. And it's going to be, in a lot of ways, ladies and gentlemen, a report card on how your folks, internal and external stakeholders, are viewing what your schools are. And boards have taken that information and become energized and used it for strategic planning, developing priorities. But even more importantly, when we come back in on phase 5, after your superintendent's on the job for about 30 days, that's the information that you're going to use, your superintendent's going to use, to create those first year performance objectives. In other words, what's the critical priority work that your next superintendent is going to be hold themselves accountable to, but you're also going to be mutually accountable to develop and ascertain. And that's why our superintendents stay longer than most in the country, is because that first year we are absolutely committed to that being an outstanding year. In fact, nationally, we do a presentation at a superintendent conferences, and it's just called simply extending the honeymoon. The idea that the real work is going to be there. What are the priorities? You're going to get that from your stakeholder groups. You're going to get that from conversations amongst yourself. You're going to come together as a board in a very strong way through this process, because this is the most important task that this Board of Education today is going to undertake. And we're going to find you one heck of a high-quality superintendent to help you achieve your goals.
Thank you again. And at this time, I'll open the floor, any governing board members to chime in for any question.
I've got a
Covered everything, wow.
I got a quick question for you, sir. This is David Sandoval. First off,
Yes, sir.
thank you for the certainly the time and certainly your interest in leading us through this process.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Could you talk a little bit?
Oh, let me turn this off. How about now?
Perfect.
All right. So again, thank you for taking the time and certainly your interest in leading us through this process. Here in Arizona, we have a few superintendent positions that are open, and you being a businessman, certainly, as you take a look at those opportunities, if your firm is, also, I guess, throwing your name in the hat for some of those other districts, and if you are, awarded a contract with us and another district, have you done this before, where the opportunities are very close in proximity? And how does your firm, propose that you'll delineate between the two efforts? You take a look at the target audience and those, you talked about your Rolodex, delineating between the audience and those prospects, that, will, be used to send our way, as well as, potentially another district. Even from a branding perspective, how do you propose that you'll delineate between the two efforts?
Yes. Okay, great question, Mr. Sandoval. And so, first of all, let me tell you that you'll have my undivided attention on this search. This is the only other search I'm going to be doing probably for the rest of the year. And with regard to your state, we finished Dysart. They're finishing up, I want to say Liberty Elementary School someplace, and that's a different set of consultants. The team that I bring in to work with you is going to be dedicated to your district and your district only. We will send a notice of vacancy to about 2,000 superintendent wannabes around the country that, in fact, we've been retained by you, and we encourage everybody to apply. But again, we're going to look at that applicant pool or that individual applicant. We're going to weight it against your criteria. And I know that other firms do the same thing. So, we're going to have candidates that are registered with, most candidates are registered with all of the search firms, big search firms in the country. And so, there's a lot of people looking at our searches and their searches. I will tell you this too. One of the things that Tom Jacobson believes is that we just don't take searches for the sake of taking searches. That we're pretty discerning in terms of what we go after and what states we go after. We feel very comfortable in Arizona. Arizona has been successful for us, but we have not submitted bids, if you will, for all the districts that have been open. And there's been several of a large size. We researched you just like you researched us. And we want to make sure that what we offer is going to be successful, because if we take on a job that is not going to lead to, one, a robust candidate pool, then there isn't anything that we're going to be able to tell candidates other than lower your head, say a prayer, give it a shot. We think you got a 50-50 chance of being successful. And sadly, that's happening around the country an awful lot. So we're not assembly line at all. And in fact, if you look at our proposal, the names of the consultants that are listed in there won't work this search because they're working a different search. So we may share information on a candidate if they're in both pools, but I will assure you, this will be unique to Peoria, and we're going to aggressively promote your district, and I'm going to aggressively promote your district. And does that answer your question, sir?
It did. Thank you for that.
So, is this thing on? Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Hi, and thanks for speaking to us tonight. I'm Judy Doan. I have a question, perhaps with the, what have you done? I got the thing in the mail from Dysart, and I saw that you had done their superintendent search. And
Yes.
have you done any other local searches in the past couple of years?
In Arizona?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do Kyrene, but another set of consultants did Kyrene. That was very successful. I led the Tucson Sunnyside search,
Okay.
which probably isn't considered local in Phoenix, I know, but, you know, I'll tell you, that's where I cut my teeth in Arizona. So I got to know a lot of the state players. I got to know a lot of the prospective candidates. We had a great candidate pool. But you know, one of the difficulties that your state's facing, and you know this, your school financial situation is not very good. And so resources are difficult in charter schools and, you know, some of that's going on. So, you know, it's really, your next superintendent is going to be motivated to be in Peoria. And there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to motivate them. So yes, I've been to Arizona many, many times. I feel like I understand Arizona law very well. We're well connected with Arizona superintendents and association leaders. So we have the ability to, this will be a local search. I mean, it's, you know, you're going to get three kinds of candidates. You're going to get the northern Minnesota candidates that have had it with the worst winter in the history of the world. You're going to get candidates that have family in Arizona, that maybe were here a part of their life, that are now practicing superintendents of Colorado, California. They're going to want to come back because your size and what you represent is going to be attractive. And then you're going to have sitting superintendents in Arizona that are going to look at this as a promotion, next step up in terms of responsibility and stature, if you will. And then you're going to have associate superintendents that are ready for the next step. And the question is, can you go from an assistant superintendency to a superintendency in a district you're large, as large as you are? And that's going to be, you know, for us to help you make that determination. So every search is local, and this is going to stand on its own legs as, you know, something we're going to make attractive to people. But, you know, I want to be completely honest with you too. You know, when we start working together soon to get this launched, you're going to tell me a lot about what you're looking for and what those opportunities and what those challenges are. And, you know, compensation is going to enter into this at some point too. You know, sometimes districts feel like, you know, this is an opportunity to save money. And, you know, candidates will never ask you in an interview, what are you going to pay if you don't hire them? But I guarantee they're going to ask us right away, you know, what are the salary parameters? And if they're a superintendent in another district in Arizona, they're going to be real nervous about what do they tell their board with regard to them having an interest in Peoria. So again, you'll have my undivided attention on this search. We'll bring in a team of people that will approach it the same way. And you know, we're not in competition, because my guess is right now in Arizona, from what I know, I think Mesa's going through a search, but I don't know any other districts that are really kind of in your category. And I'll tell you, in Dysart, we had a lot of, so there's folks in the state of Arizona that are looking for. One more thing I will tell you too, we treat internal candidates exactly like we treat external candidates. We don't give we recommend not to give courtesy interviews. If they have the skills characteristics and the references are good, we treat them just like we treat externals. But I want you to know that going into, because what we're seeing a lot now is many districts, particularly inside, are trying to promote folks that they're familiar with.
So just your opinion, do you feel that we will have a robust pool of candidates?
Yeah, I do. But let me again tell you this. 10 years ago, you would have had 100 applicants, and you would have had 10 that met your criteria. Maybe 20 years ago. I'm getting old. I've been at this for a long time. Today, you might have 30 applicants, and we'll have 5 or 6 that we're going to be excited about. I consider that to be a robust pool. Now, I can tell you that we might have 80 inquiries, and I sometimes smile when I follow other searchers and I hear that they had 30 people that were interested. Well, a phone call is interesting, and we discourage people that don't have what you're looking for from even applying, and we just say that the district is going to require this, and you're not there. So in Dysart, I don't remember the number, but we exceeded what we thought we were going to get. And I think that'll be the case here. But at the end of the day, what you want us to do when we come in and bring you the final candidate list, my goal is that we bring you 4 or 5 people, and you say to me, boy, this is a hard decision. Because maybe you only want to interview 3. Maybe you say you want to interview 4. And then somebody doesn't get the position. And we'll work you through a collaborative consensus building technique again to determine, and we'll have a rubric to determine who you do want to finally interview. But then I'll know it's successful when I talk to the board chair and they say, we can't make the decision tonight. This is too tough. We have 2 people or 3 people really interested. That to me, it doesn't matter if we got 20 applicants or 2,000 applicants. If you have a tough decision to make because we brought you quality, we did a good job, and you're going to get a great superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is hear me?
Can you hear Mrs. Pangarelli?
Yes, can you hear the screen?
No, I can't.
Okay, just a moment.
We might have to relay.
Okay, Mrs. Pangarelli, we just received word you'll have to relay so that we can hear you in the district office. So if you don't mind asking your question, and then I can repeat it for you.
Okay, I would like to know if the board sees all of the applicants.
The question Mrs. Pangarelli asked, can the board see all the applicants?
Yes, we will bring the entire list of applicants to the board meeting, and the consultants, as consultants, will be prepared to answer questions on anybody. There will probably be names that you're familiar with that didn't make our final presentation list. We'll bring complete files of our finalists. We'll work with you on a schedule. We'll end up spending 4 or 5 hours that night in which you can go through the applications and read the references. We'll have the video interviews. So yes, I mean, none of that's hidden. I will tell you this, I mentioned earlier, it's a very, very competitive environment. A lot of our superintendents that are quality candidates, if they're interested, they're going to want to know that they're a viable candidate. And so what typically happens in just to be candid and honest, as we get closer and it gets later and sitting superintendents get a little bit more nervous about, competing and having to tell their board that they're doing that, we have to make sure when we come in that they're all in. So what we say to all of our candidates is, we tell the 4 or the 5 that we're going to recommend them to the board tonight. The board's going to go through a process in which they're going to select 3 or 4. We keep them duly informed through the entire process. And we tell everybody else that as an applicant, completed application, and it has to be a completed application, then the board is going to have access to your material. And so whatever we bring in that night to you, those are people that have told us they're all in.
Mrs. Pangarelli, any more questions?
I do have another one. In terms of the amount that they've, I'm sorry, I'm getting here. They quoted $1,000. Would we be able to our Danielle Aries to be able to do any of the advertising also? And will the cost be more than $1,000?
Okay, so let me just clarify, Mrs. Pingerelli, because you cut out just a little bit. In terms of the amount, we are referring to district services and marketing and PR in regards to Ms. Danielle Airy, is that correct?
That's correct. They're supposed to pay $1,000, and I didn't know how much we're able to do and kind of keep the cost down.
I think she's wondering if there's some service that Mrs. Airy can do as compared, thank you, his service that Mrs. Airy can do as compared to the company to bring the costs down. That makes.
So I believe the question is surrounding, when we addressed marketing services, we received your outline, and some of your services do rely on our district for support. Are any of our district services, can they be applied to reduce the cost of what has been presented?
Yes. Yes, and we're happy to talk with you about that, and that's fairly common. Yeah, what we've produced in terms of an estimate is an all-inclusive fee, assuming that we do everything. But certainly we're happy to talk with you about how can we streamline some of our costs and transfer that over, and we'll work with whomever you'd like to have us work with on that.
Thank you. Mrs. Pingerelli, did you hear that response?
I did.
Any further questions?
I did have one other question about a 2016-17 search with Omaha Public Board, and they did not go further after. They did not accept me. I just wanted to see if there was something we need to know about.
Yes. In 2017, your firm did a search in Omaha, Nebraska. The board did not continue with your services. Do you mind elaborating on that situation, please?
Yeah, I can. If you read all of the news accounts, the Omaha board was struggling mightily around a concept, and I didn't do the search. I wasn't involved in that search at all. But I can tell you that there were just some major issues with they had 3 good candidates, 3 national level candidates, and the board was not able to reach consensus on any one of the search was suspended. Then I think, rather than me editorialize, I think everything was on full display through the media. And it was unfortunate, I mean, it happens. It was rare, but there just wasn't enough of agreement in terms of bringing it to successful resolution. So, and it's our home state, I mean, our offices are in Omaha, Nebraska. So because I also live in Nebraska and I'm a sitting superintendent, I was not involved in that search, so I'm not at liberty, nor do I know what exactly went on. But the contract was terminated. They brought in a different search firm. They recently hired a superintendent. And, for whatever reason, there were just some things that were not going to allow an appropriate match to occur in the time in which that search was undergoing.
Thank you. And I just had one other question. Is Mary our contact person?
I apologize, Ms. Pingerelli, can you repeat that?
They had, in their quote, had given a person named Mary, I'm not sure what the last name is. She was going to be our consultant that worked with us. Is that still the same person?
That's a great segue, Ms. Pingerelli, because I was going to ask, that was going to be my only question. And we are cutting short on time with Skype, so let me just go ahead and phrase that to you, Mr. Joel. You had mentioned you had a team. In the packet that you provided to us, there is a name by Miss Mary Camarzell. She is listed as one of
Yes.
our consultants. I was interested primarily because her experience with school finance. I would like to know what her role is in the consulting search and who is your team.
Okay, so I believe Dr. Camarzell and I led the Dysart search. So she's a sitting superintendent down in the Tucson area, very successful in Arizona, and somebody who's been with our firm for a decade or so. I don't know that she's available for this. I mean, I think she might be working on one of the other searches. In terms of a team, Larry Mason was listed, and he lives in the wintertime, smart man that he is, in Arizona. I think he's originally from Michigan. Dr. Bill Dean and his wife Barb are two consultants of ours. They live in the Tucson area, former superintendent, former ASSA staff member that have worked on a couple of searches. He actually assisted me in the Tucson Sunnyside search. But I will tell you this about consultants, and this includes me. You have the ability to go through that consultant list and choose who you want. And I think there's more than 100 names that are listed there. So, we're not married to anyone in particular, but I will tell you that, the success of a search is a board's willingness to come together around the important work. But it's also about the skills of a consultant in being able to provide, good advice and good counsel with regard to, proceeding ahead, moving forward. So I would just say that, if you're interested in Dr. Camarzell, I would be happy to see what I could do to get her to assist me. I know she'll help vet candidates. I know she'll help market the position. She's very well established in the state. So when this proposal was put together, both Tom Jacobson and Larry Mason and Dr. Camarzell had availability. I think they're all working different searches right now.
Thank you very much. Governing Board, are there any more questions for Mr. Joel? No. Mr. Hicks?
Just, Madam President, members of the board, just for clarification, because of the RFQ process, we're not allowed to negotiate a pricing because that was one of the questions.
Right.
We would have to redo the scope of work and allow all vendors to now reapply with their pricing in that sense. So because of procurement rules.
Thank you for that clarification. Any more questions? Mrs. Pangarelli, any more questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Joel, for your time and patience this evening. We appreciate you taking the time to answer all our questions. Is there any questions that you would like to ask any of us?
When will you make a decision?
That is a great question. It is agendized tonight. So after we do our next presentation, later on in our agenda, we will be making a vote.
Good. Very good. Well, thank you for this opportunity, and it's a real pleasure to meet each and every one of you. I love the opportunity to come down and work with you. I will say good luck with your decision and good luck with your process, whichever direction you go. Finding a superintendent and helping a superintendent succeed is probably the most important thing you'll do in your tenure as a board member in Peoria. My sense is you're well prepared to do that, and I just want to wish you the very, very best of luck. I hope you select us. I look forward to coming out.
Thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for your patience. We are now moving on to our next presenter. But we just take a moment, Governing Board, this is a study session, so that way, is there any free conversation you would like to discuss at this time before we move on? Okay. Going forward, we'll move on to our next presenter. It is Arizona School Boards Association. They will provide their presentation.
Thank you, Board. Appreciate being here tonight, and we're certainly happy to talk with you tonight about our search services and what we can bring to Peoria Unified in the opportunity to provide superintendent search services. Oh, thanks for community environment. Of course, that's great. So we did receive the questions, and I'm prepared to address each of those and answer any questions the board might have relative to how ASBA can help you guys be successful.
Okay, excellent. We'll start with the first one again. This is Mr. Steve Hyland, and we have our governing board members, Mr. Sandoval, Ms. Connect, Ms. Stone, and Mrs. Pangarelli, who's with us via audio. And we'll start off. Oh,
No, it's not.
I apologize. I was following the sheet, Mr. Overman. So thank you. Thank you for that correction. That's what happens when you read scripts. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with the first one. Please provide, what do you believe are the 3 most important characteristics that differentiate you from other superintendent search firms, and what do you believe your firm does better than other firms?
Thank you. The Arizona School Boards Association, of course, is a private nonprofit organization, and we represent all school districts in Arizona. And in that capacity, we know Arizona intimately. We're very deeply rooted in providing policy services and legal consultation to every district. We're very familiar with the ins and outs of the open meeting law and the meeting requirements. We have successfully completed 90 searches in Arizona over the last decade, and we are recently finishing up several districts around Arizona, and we'll have full capacity to give Peoria the kind of attention that you deserve. We also have a key philosophical difference from for-profit search firms, and that is that you're our client. And while it's great to have a Rolodex of potential candidates, we go recruit candidates based on the criteria that this board and this community sets up and tells us are the important characteristics for this next leader. So we begin a process that is customized to your needs, and we sit in a working session and help you to identify the kind of process that will lead you to a successful conclusion. For example, I know that there is bond and override consideration going on, and so that may very well be a characteristic that this board deems as very important. We also, in our process, typically for a district of this size and sophistication, will do community input opportunities, whether those are public meetings or whether those are survey opportunities. We want anybody, whether they're patron, parent, employee, to have the opportunity to have their fingerprints on those criteria, so that when the board agrees on the standards for the next superintendent, that everybody feels some ownership in that process. And then that allows us to customize the search. And so as a member, we're going to be with you start to finish, and we're going to be around after the fact. And our search team, of course, does this full-time. We have a breadth of team experiences in our office, and we would certainly be honored to bring you the A-team.
Thank you. Superintendents take on multidisciplinary roles in a school district, sometimes providing strategic guidance on curriculum, other times acting as chief operating officer, and always serving as public relations specialist for the community. What key characteristic, in addition to leadership, does your search firm focus on upon identifying candidates, which it presents to the school governing board for hiring consideration?
The criteria that you direct certainly guide the process. However, our staff includes veteran practitioners, and among our team we have representatives that have served in every capacity in K-12 education. We have folks in our senior leadership team that have been seated board members in Arizona. We have former superintendent. as myself, a former superintendent. We have other central office administrative folks. We have folks that have worked in advocacy and community work around the state. And so we bring all of that in a collective environment to kind of wrap around all of the different factors. Ironically, just last week, I had the opportunity to attend the National Superintendent's Conference, and I actually did meet with 2 potential candidates, one from out of state, and who actually knew I was there and wanted to know about the Peoria opportunity, and one from in-state. And so even though we weren't your search representative, certainly you're our member. And those folks were reaching out to me in that environment to find out a little bit about you folks, and if they might have the kind of skills and characteristics this board might be looking for. So in short, we customize our service, and all of those elements that you describe in the question are up for consideration, and we'll help you prioritize the most important characteristics as we take community input, certainly the board's input, to develop that brochure that we'll send out to candidates.
Thank you. Can you please provide a detailed breakdown of the background check that your firm would complete?
Yes, thank you. We, in the preliminary round, once we get through community input, establishing the criteria, developing the brochure, and then putting out our national network so we get the best possible candidate pool for you, we then do preliminary screening. And so what we do is we verify candidates' backgrounds, validate their resumes, check some references as we develop the packets to bring to the board. This board would see every applicant packet and have an opportunity to review every resume that they want to. Once we kind of work through that, then the board will direct us to to select folks to come in for personal interviews, which are done in executive session in Arizona. And that's when we solicit the services of an outside background checking firm. I brought an example from another search in Arizona. Obviously, it's blacked out because this was an actual background check. It's a 7-page document for this individual candidate that includes every residence that they've ever lived in, and includes the county criminal records, Social Security searches. It includes validating their academic preparation through resume verification with the universities. And so we do that on every then candidate that you guys identify as finalists. So that's how we do that.
Can you please describe instruments and tools that your firm uses to measure candidate characteristics that include but are not limited to student dedication, advocacy, community involvement, customer service, and experience in bonds and override elections?
Yes, thank you. The criteria that are adopted by the board, and we'll ask formal action by the board in a public session to identify those criteria. Once those criteria are established, then our staff goes to work to develop a rubric that board members will use in candidate screening. So we mocked up for you a sample of what that might look like, and let me hand that out to members of the board here, and we'll kind of just cruise through it real quickly. So this particular screening document is, as I said, just a mock-up of what it might look like. So you'll see there that, so let's say, for example, that we bring you 30 applicants to review, and our staff will have been through every word of every application and done some preliminary screening for you. And we'll certainly have some recommendations on folks we want you to give serious consideration to and folks that perhaps don't meet your criteria. So we'll separate those out for you in the early portion. Then we'll work through the screening document. And as you'll see here, you identify the candidate, and this would be a worksheet for the board. And because this is done in executive session, you put your name on these, you would fill them out, as you go through packets, and then we would collect them and preserve them in executive session confidential documents. Then when we come back for further screening, we reissue those to you. That's how we protect the integrity of the candidates and the integrity of Arizona's open meeting law. So you see the matched position requirements. The next page, you'll see the qualifications where you're able to identify what the qualified candidates, what kind of characteristics they have. And then in the application process, we'll ask the board to identify some district-specific questions that candidates will answer in writing. You'll have a chance to read those and review them, and then, rank order the quality of the answer of that particular candidate. So this is just a sample of a screening document, a screening rubric that we would utilize in that session when we're screening candidates in the preliminary round.
Thank you. And the last one, can you describe the marketing process and explain the level of involvement from district staff to help facilitate a successful process?
Yes, of course. We think this is a significant strength of the Arizona School Boards Association because we know virtually every senior leader in our state, and every district is a member. And so we have many common acquaintances for the in-state candidates. In addition, we work intimately with the Arizona Superintendents Association as well as ASBO, the school business officials, the Arizona Department of Ed. And then there is one of me in each of our 50 states, and each of the 50 states participates in a national network of superintendent search procedures. And so if we get a candidate from Virginia or from Michigan or wherever it might be, we're on the phone right away to that state association for them to back check with the local boards in those areas to find out the kind of characteristics that particular candidate has demonstrated in their seated district. So we have that national network that has served us very, very well. In addition, we have reciprocal candidate relationships with over 40 universities across the country in superintendent training programs, and we send this information out to those folks. And of course, we do our own marketing work around the state.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and start off with Mrs. Doan. Do you have any questions?
Not right now, I'm still thinking.
Okay. Mrs. Connect?
No, I do not.
Mr. Sandoval?
I do. So thank you for your responses and your time. You mentioned a couple times about the national footprint of ASBA with regard to mobilizing searches, for local superintendent positions. Can you talk a little more in detail of those national capabilities?
Sure. The 50 state school boards associations have what we call a work-alike group, where there is a representative from each of the 50 state associations that actually they meet twice a year to talk about trends and superintendent and board hiring practices around the country. And we share candidate pool information. And so virtually for all of the searches we've done in the last several years, our districts have been fortunate to have out-of-state candidates, and we will screen those folks from the ground, so to speak, in their local communities. And so we think that's a real significant advantage for an Arizona district because folks around the country do like the sunshine bonus, but yet we have certain local standards and local culture that is so important to our success. And we stand behind that because you're our member and we're going to be here start to finish.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just to clarify that, at the very beginning, you talked about what three most important things or what stands, and you mentioned that you don't have a Rolodex. I just wanted to know the difference between the criteria you just described versus a Rolodex, how that differentiates. And then is it considered like just-in-time inventory where you have a list of superintendents and you just call them just in time, or do you have that criteria set?
The criteria comes from the board, and so we're at your pleasure with regards to the characteristics that you want to be brought forward in the search process. And by not having a Rolodex, that's kind of a Tim phrase for we don't have standard candidates that we promote because you're our client. And many of the private search firms identify themselves as headhunters for superintendents. And philosophically, we believe our role is to help the board be successful in the selection process because it's your hire, not ours. And so not having a canned candidate pool we think is an advantage because every district's unique. And these individuals are unique. And the magic happens when both sides see the opportunity with the other.
Thank you. Mrs. Pangarelli, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have one. Is Mr. Steve our contact person for the process? I know he was our contact person for our last search.
That's what the confusion is. Who is the point of contact? Because on our list it says Mr. Steve Highland, but it also says your name, Dr. Ogle.
Thank you. We have several individuals that if you select us would participate in the search. And Steve Highland is one of our staff people that is actively involved in the search process. Because of the nature of the Peoria search and the nature of the timeline in our association, I would have my fingerprints on this particular search in addition. We also utilize Dr. Karen Gaskett, who is a former central office administrator in another suburban Maricopa County district, as well as our internal staff. So I like to say we'd bring you the A-team. I think we would. We'd love to work for you, and I would give you my personal commitment that we'll work our tail off for you.
Any other questions, Mrs. Pangarelli?
No, that was it.
All right, I just wanted to clarify the marketing process. So since we did go through, would we be using the same marketing process that we used last time by utilizing our district services?
Yes, we'd be happy to do that. We'd welcome that, actually, because you guys are so effective at that. It's a really nice strength of your district. But our fee proposal is designed to be a maximum in that we would anticipate that this board would ask us to do some significant community surveying. And so we've embedded that into the process. If the fee could be reduced if there are particular elements of the search that the board chooses not to engage in, but that's how we quote those kind of things.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, because Mr. Hicks, you stated that the proposal has to stay the proposal procurement process. So if, Mr. Hicks, from your experience last time with the search and using our district services, were they the same? Does it look the same? Because I don't have that point of reference for last time.
Madam President, members of the board, I didn't evaluate these proposals, so I don't know if it would be different or the same. I wasn't part of this process.
Okay, and so.
But just to be clear, we cannot renegotiate proposals to lower costs at this point. We have to go off of the proposals that were submitted.
Correct, and it sounds to me that we would still be using our district services based on the proposal. Okay. And then the last question I have is the criteria. So you had the opportunity to hear your competitor and their vetted process and having a 3-hour workshop, getting all stakeholders. Can you please elaborate on how you would get our stakeholders' involvement?
But we'd certainly take board direction on that. What we have done in other sophisticated large districts that has been very successful is utilized a combination of community forums where people can physically come in and talk to you and talk to us, in addition to online opt-in surveying. For example, in Gilbert, we had, when we just completed the Gilbert search, I believe we had over 6,000 participants opt in. Don't quote me on the number, but it's something like that. Individuals opt in to give the board input on the criteria they saw as important in their next leader. We're just finishing up over at Mesa, and they also elected to do some online surveying. Then we also hosted a community leader stakeholder meeting where the board hand-selected some folks from around the community that represented certain constituencies to come in and talk to the board about the search and their hopes for the next leader. So all that is included in our process, and as we would work through that process with you, we would clarify exactly what your desires were, but any and all of those things are included in our proposal, including if you want to do several community meetings and that kind of thing also. The other thing that is in our fee proposal that I think is pretty unique, and I'm pretty confident that the for-profit firms don't offer, is that we come in once the transition is about to begin or has begun. We will come in with our staff and help facilitate some consulting on the transition. So that's just part of our service to you.
Any other questions by the governing board?
I just want to clarify, along with Ms. Saya Martinez, the marketing communication line item, if you will, or element to your proposal. So while I agree, we have a top-notch communications department within the district, but your organization will support, with your marketing communication, I guess, acumen as well. That's part of,
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. And the national communication also. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just to be clear, Mr. Highland was our point person, if you will, last time.
Yes, he was.
And is he going to be this time?
We can talk about the person that's most well-suited for you.
So we don't know that yet?
Well, I mean, yes, we can use Mr. Highland, if that's
in other words,
the
that's
board's.
not said in stone yet.
Yeah, I'd love to make the commitment that I could do it myself, and I likely can, but I do have other commitments sometimes, and so we kind of use a team approach. But if the board desires for me to be the point of contact, I'm happy to do that and have the capacity to do that, because this is what we do full-time.
Thank you.
So, of course.
And so just to clarify, the presentation or the packet that we received, you would create a team, or whoever the team is,
Yes.
just not solidified either.
Yes, I mean, our team is who they are. I've identified the players. And, if the board selects ASBA as its consultant, and as I work with the board president on setting up, whatever happens, from there forward, we're happy to, massage that relationship that makes you folks happy.
Thank you. And Mrs. Pangarelli, any more questions? At this time, again, thank you very much for your time and patience. I appreciate the opportunity to ask questions. And as you heard earlier, this is a voting item this afternoon, or this evening, and Mr. Hicks mailed to me that he will be making phone calls tomorrow. So is that correct?
We would contact the voting vendor.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you having us here.
Yeah. And do we want to take a quick restroom break? Thank you.
Yep.
Please. Thank you. Ready? Well, our governing board members are almost ready, and staff. Good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time. And Ms. Ashley Hensworth, we received information to address this item.
Thank you, President Sarah Martinez, members of the board, and Ms. Powers Thompson. I was excited to get to be here to listen to the presentations from both companies and trying to see who to go with, who would represent us the best, and finding what we need as our leader. I did want to share, I was very impressed with McPherson Jacobson, the fact that they are national, that we'd be pulling from a larger pool, that there would be more candidates out of state, fresh faces that maybe we haven't seen before or haven't heard from before, I think would be a great opportunity. I also like that he brought up at the beginning that their retention rate for superintendents is higher than the national average. I think that that's something that as a district right now, we are fiercely looking for someone who would be able to stick around for a while and lead us in the direction we're going in. So I just wanted to say that as a member in the community and as a teacher in your school district, I did like the McPherson Jacobson company in moving forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, with that, no more comments from the community about item 4.1, so we'll go ahead and open the floor for discussion. We've had the opportunity to now vet two companies that have submitted their proposals. A lot of information was provided prior and discussed in the last board meeting. Now we've had opportunity to ask questions. I would like to start off with Mr. Sandoval. Would you like to provide any feedback on one way or the other? Oh, okay, so I was thinking we just discuss, right? Is this just
discussion?
Just discussion for 4.1? Okay, so then we'll reconvene discussion back when we bring it back to the voting item on. Okay, sounds good to me. All right, we're moving on to, we did 5.1, public comment. There are no more additional comments from the public. And we're now going to address consent agenda. 6.1, approval of a consent agenda. Does any governing board members have any requests to pull an item?
Can I just have a minute to look at 6.4 again real quickly?
Yes. We could pull it and then you would like more time? Or?
I don't know that I have an issue. I just wanted to revisit from the first time we talked about it. I wanted to get another look at it. So yes, I move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 6.4.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Connect and a second by Ms. Stone to approve the consent agenda item excluding 6.4 for discussion. We're going to do a roll call vote because we have Mrs. Pengarelli verbal.
Yay.
Mr. Sandoval? Yay. Mrs. Connect?
Aye.
Mrs. Stone, aye, and as well as aye. So unanimous pass for the consent agenda item 5-0. Now we're going to take an opportunity to discuss 6.4, second reading of policy revisions, GDF, support staff hiring, and GDFA, support staff qualifications and requirements. Mrs. Connect.
Well, so I don't see Dr. Davidson here. You have to get standard. Just wondering if there were there changes from the discussion we had before? Oh, sorry about that. You told me not to do that. Sorry.
I believe the changes that you addressed last time should be added in here. I again apologize that Dr. Davidson is not here tonight. He is with his family. His son is in a band concert, a district band concert, at his school tonight. So I do believe that those changes were added in.
Okay, I'm looking at it now, and it's reflective of what we talked about before, so I'm moving to approve it.
And do we have a second? Second. We have a motion by Mrs. Connect and a second by Mr. Sandoval. We will proceed with a verbal vote. Everybody all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay.
Thank you.
It's unanimous, 5-0. Motion passes. Moving on to the next item. 7.1, address agenda and consideration adoption of recommendation of the changes. Would any board members like to move any of the agenda items?
No.
As is. Moving on to 8.1, recommendation to approve the selection and superintendent search consulting services per RFQ 78-18. We recently had an opportunity to hear 2 companies present to the governing board. The first one was Arizona School Boards Association, and the second was let me get their full title, McPherson and Jacobson, LLC. Open the floor for discussion, and again, please feel free. This is a great opportunity in this surrounding just to jump in for conversation.
So for me, it's, there's no doubt both organizations have certainly demonstrated their ability to search and then ultimately define, a candidate, superintendent candidate for multiple districts on a national scale. That said, when I take a look at, the importance of market intelligence, an understanding, of your target audience, the ability to do so seamlessly, and and even the, the ability to have, your partner kind of at your fingertips. I think, I still, stick with my original, certainly recommendation, and that we moved to partner with the Arizona School Board Association due to those factors. I think from a process, they have a national footprint, and certainly their market intelligence are really those areas that stand out for me.
Mrs. Connect?
Oh, well, I haven't changed my opinion either. I was very impressed by both of the presentations, and actually, certainly, you get a better picture listening to the individuals speak in person, so I have a better understanding of both of the firms, and I think they're both excellent firms. I did get the sense, one of the things that, I think it's Mr. Joel, right? Mm-hmm. Mr. Joel was saying is that, something that I commented at the last meeting, that it's typical, I would imagine it's typical that regardless of the firm that we chose, we would have a very similar applicant pool, because people who are in the market for becoming a superintendent of a large school district, as he put it, they're going to register with all the firms that could open doors for them. So then I go back to the criteria that, in my mind, that I was focusing on last time, and that is cost. And I believe that ASBA was a little less. Is that correct? Yeah. A little bit less. And I do like the idea of hiring a firm that is within the state, because I like the idea of keeping money, buying local, like I said last time. I think that Dr. Ogle did a good job of really illustrating the national network. And that was the one question that I had that was answered, is would an Arizona firm have the reach throughout a national network. And I think he explained that, in fact, through the Superintendent's Association and the school boards associations across the country, that they would, in fact, have access to many national candidates. And then this is something that I did not know about the relationship that ASBA has with universities in their superintendent prep programs. So that all those reasons, combined with the fact that they are a nonprofit versus a for-profit, just reinforced what the conclusion that I'd come to when we reviewed the material before, that I think ASBA would be the best choice.
Mrs. Stone?
Well, I do like ASBA, but I'm leaning towards McPherson-Jacobson. I was a little disappointed with the service last time, as far as I was not sure they were aggressive enough in their search, to tell you the truth. I didn't feel that the board was able to get across quite as clearly maybe what we wanted. I'm not sure that might have been, a fault on the part of the board. And I'm kind of leaning towards trying a new company. And I do like the fact that they are I think perhaps a for-profit company will be more aggressive in finding what we want, and they want to keep their record stellar. They want to seat somebody that's going to really suit and be, retained for a long period. So I'm really leaning towards McPherson and Jacobson. I think that, if we do choose ASBA, they will put in, good effort and stuff, but I'm leaning the other way.
Mrs. Pangarelli?
Thank you. Both companies answered my questions, and I'm comfortable with both. The first pick that I had was in Jacobson, and I still have them as for a couple of reasons. The first is that it's a 3-day holder input session at the beginning, where they talk to administrators, teachers, classified staff, students, parents, and students. I like that up to see what the community is looking for, superintendent, and then they provide a report back to the board. I also like the end of the process, where they have each candidate present one at a time, and we are able to come at a formal, as we did last time, but also an input session. They also invite their spouse and significant other, and I think that that would be a better situation for our visitors. So I have the same mind. They're both very good, but I still like to go with McPherson Jacobson.
So, Mrs. Pangarelli, just to clarify, you identified the search process, the workshop, and positives in both, but McPherson, was that the last part? Can you repeat your last sentence?
Oh, I'm sorry. At the very last part, where we're interviewing the final candidates, whether it's 2 or 3 final candidates, last time we did not bring it one at a time. McPherson Jacobson recommended them come in and being at the district for an entire day and bringing their spouse and other. So they can figure out the candidates they would become familiar with our district. Is that a little bit clearer?
We need to work on the audio for this.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my audio is really bad.
She was talking about how at the end, they're going to bring in interviewees one at a time, bring their spouse in, let them see the area, that kind of,
The vetting, the background check, the references.
that too.
Okay. Anything else, Mrs. Pangarelli?
No, I'm good.
So I took a look at, last time I had no idea because this is the first time, and I took a look at both organizations, and I looked at what Peoria values. And we value community feedback and staff feedback, and that has been a consistent message that I've heard from the governing board, and how we solicit feedback. We've seen results with that. And we've also heard from staff and our executive team that they would like to be a part of that process. So I will tell you, for both sides, they have strengths, but what concerns me is we don't know who we're working with when we're dealing with either ASBA or McPherson for the team, the consulting team. But with that being said, I look at who's going to add the most value through the process and the candidate search, and using data from the stakeholders. I had the privilege with ASBA hosting our last superintendent's onboarding process. ASBA was there, so I do believe that is a value-added piece. But what I particularly liked is the data that presented in the McPherson presentation is the workshop and the ongoing criteria used that we can use when we develop our strategic plan. And this board has continuously said that we need a strategic plan. The other big piece is longevity. I understand that ASBA, in a sense of cost, is a few thousand less, but if we take into consideration we used ASB last time and we're going to use them again, we're roughly paying close to $48,000 for one superintendent.
But that would be two superintendents.
Correct, but for longevity, essentially, we're still paying one organization to do a search for one school district. And so in my mind, the way I'm wrapping my mind around data and cost, I'm concerned with ASBA getting the same results and trying something new, just to be straightforward. And I am willing to spend a few $1,000s more for a longevity in the superintendent search. And the fact that the results that they gave us and our neighboring school districts supersede what is out there in the district and ASBA for that matter. When I looked at the Better Business Bureau, I saw great results and feedback on McPherson. I agree, Mr. Sandoval, to your marketing aspect. We know from experience we used our own PR services, and I like the fact that McPherson's proposal included that they would do all of it. And then ultimately the background check. We heard feedback in our first study session in January that the background check with ASBA was less than par. So looking at this proposal, I like the background check to McPherson. So at this point, I am fully committed to selecting McPherson and Jacobson.
Mrs. Ceja Martinez, does my past connection on the ASBA board have anything to do with your decision?
No, I abstained from the first vote, and I've listened to both companies and have clearly identified more than 3 factors to identify which company.
I'm just asking because at the open meeting that was our retreat, you specifically said that you had an issue with ASBA because of my past board service.
I said I had concerns with the superintendent for interim superintendent search. However, they were not part of that process. This is a whole new conversation, and I spent hours researching. I do like the fact that ASBA is a nonprofit, but if we're going to take a look at nonprofit, we need to also look at their financials in 990 form and see what's the ratio of revenue and how much they pay their staff to how much it's benefiting the community or who they're advocating for. I honestly have not had time to do that research. I was basing the research based on what was presented and what was found on the Better Business Bureau, what was vetted in the conversation, and looking at the values of Peoria Unified. And correct me if I'm wrong, we do appreciate community feedback.
Exactly, and I think that, I don't want to argue about it, I can see the way that this is going, so, but to say that ASBA said that they wouldn't do community outreach, I think they said public meetings and/or surveys would be part of their package. So we can end the conversation now, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, well, real quick though, I mean, I didn't hear that they wouldn't go through a very diligent process to ensure that there were many voices heard to determine or come up with a pool of candidates. I also didn't hear that, we wouldn't be able to use their marketing services at all. They would 100% lean on us. So that said, I mean, in addition, on top of that, what I do like is the fact that, when you take a look at, individuals who sit in seats across different verticals within ASBA, they've all sat in varied seats, in education. So, I certainly like the fact that there is a relevance and association there with regard to, those individuals having input to really determine, the right candidate for PUSD, not only from a academic perspective, but certainly, varied other characteristics and values-based type decisions.
I do agree with you, Mr. Sandoval, especially the concerns about Arizona layout. Looking at a couple of their consultants, one of them was Arizona Superintendent of the Year in 2005, is also sitting on Arizona's co-chair School Finance Reform Committee. So looking at the resumes that were presented in the McPherson also had that same criterion knowledge of Arizona. So I do hear your concerns, but I also see them reflected in the presentation we received in McPherson.
They did do a very, very nice delivery. It was good.
All right, at this time, then, it sounds to me that we have some idea. Is there a motion?
I motion that we move forward with the Arizona School Boards Association.
Is there a second?
Oh, second.
We're going to do a roll call vote. There is a motion and second. Mr. Sandoval motion, Ms. Connect second for ASBA, using them as the consulting search firm. We'll start with Mr. Sandoval. Roll call vote. Yay. Mrs. Connect?
Aye.
Mrs. Doan?
Nay.
Mrs. Pengarelli?
Nay.
Myself is a nay. Motion fails, 2-3. I need a motion for... I move to choose McPherson and Jacobson for our superintendent search consulting firm.
I will second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Seja Martinez, second by Mrs. Pengarelli. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Sandoval?
I'll abstain.
Pardon me?
Abstain.
Abstain. Mrs. Connect?
Aye.
Mrs. Doan?
Aye.
Mrs. Pengarelli?
Aye.
Myself is an aye. We had a 4-0 and 1 abstained. The motion passes. We are going with McPherson and Jacobson for our superintendent search. Moving on to the next item, 8.3, consideration of approval of the issuance of certified and administrative contracts for 2018-2019 school year. 8.2. I did that again. Discussion and consideration of retention. Yeah, we're just retention stipend for certified and classified staff members. And yes, this is a positive note. So.
Good evening, President Seja Martinez, governing board members, Mrs. Pallas-Thompson, and council. We are here tonight with an action item where we have our budget committee that is recommending the governing board approve our retention stipend in the amount of $400 for certified staff and $125 for our classified staff for their timely return of their contracts that will be forthcoming, hopefully within the next week. As you can see in the past, last year, our certified staff received $250 for their timely return of their contracts, and our classified staff received $75. I know that Mr. Hicks has been working very diligently with our budget committee, and I know that our teachers and our classified staff have appreciated this token of appreciation on behalf of our district for the timely return of their contracts. And again, they are asking that you approve this stipend and this increase, again, for $400 for certified staff and $125 for classified staff.
Thank you very much. And we'll start with conversation. Mr. Sandoval?
Mr. Hicks, Budget Committee, HR. No, thank you. We are always, looking at ways to, show our teachers and staff, how much we absolutely do value them and appreciate what they do for the district and really ultimately, for the community on a daily basis. So, I think it's certainly a nice gesture and a really, really good step in a direction that, one that I believe that we all feel, is, continuous improvement with regard to, integrating, implementing programs, systems, pay increases to really, ensure that our teachers and staff, fully understand, that they're absolutely valued. So thank you.
Mrs. Connect?
I'll just say that anything that puts more money in our teachers' pockets and our classified staff pockets and shores up our workforce is a good idea.
Mrs. Doan?
I was really glad to see an increase in this. Thank you.
Mrs. Pengarelli?
We lost her.
Okay. And I would echo my fellow governing board members. Thank you, Mr. Hicks and HR, for listening to our voices and the staff. So at this time, I am also very pleased with this.
So I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve the issuance of certified administrative contracts. Wait a minute, I'm on the wrong one. The retention stipend for certified and classified staff members.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Doan, a second by Mrs. Connect. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 4-0, one absent. Moving on, thank you so very much. Moving on to 8.3, consideration of approval of issuance of certified and administrative contracts for 2018-2019 school year. And Dr. Carter-Davidson is not here. Please proceed.
Thank you, President Sayal Martinez, governing board members, Mrs. Pellis-Thompson, and council again. We are excited to be moving forward and with this next action item where we're asking the board to authorize the renewal of our contracts for our 2018-19 school year for our certified staff and our administrative staff. What we are hoping for tonight is that in front of you, you have the list of both the administrative and the certified staff that are appropriately certified and that are eligible for rehire at this time. The documents in front of you, they are a living document, which means on a daily basis it's changing based off of our employees that have retired, those that have resigned, those that are choosing to continue with our district. And so what's in front of you is what we know right now as of today of those people that are choosing to return. And again, those will start to change and we will continue to keep track of that for you through our upcoming HR reports. So again, this is an action item. We ask that you authorize the renewal of our contracts. We'd like to move forward with getting our contracts out on March 2nd, which is just in a little over a week. And with your approval tonight, we'll be able to move forward on behalf of all of our employees in our district.
So I have a question, and I think this is for Mr. Hicks. So the contracts include the salary levels, right?
Madam President, members of the board, contracts are issued with the current year, what they're making now,
Okay,
their
so
base pay.
we have yet to finally establish whether or not there will be changes for the following
Correct.
year.
Madam President, members of the board, the contract language allows for when the governing board, traditionally, if you look at last year, around the end of April, recommendation is made from the budget team to the governing board. When they approve that, then that takes the place of,
Okay.
and the contract language allows for changes in that depending on state funding and such. And so
Right.
when that
I didn't think
recommendation
we were
happens.
ready for that part of it, so, very good. All right. Then I move to approve. Did we already do that part? No, we did.
I do have one question, because I did receive an email. Counselors, school counselors, are they in this contract language, either one? And the reason why I bring this up is because they shared their concerns with comp hours. Is this the time for this discussion, that their contract comp hours? And I forwarded it to Mrs. Pellis Thompson. They also did not receive 301 monies because they weren't working with students. They were missed out. So they were, I just need some clarification because I know this was brought up.
Madam President, members of the board, they do receive 301. What the email that you requested was to have that included in their contract. We only give the base pay. And so that is a function of our software and how that happens. And because we do electronic contracts now, we're limited in that. And so I believe HR is working with payroll to create an automated solution online where they could calculate and determine that. But yes, counselors are in this list. They are certified staff, and yes, they receive 301.
Okay. And then, did I get that? Did I get everything, Mrs. Linda Pellis Thompson, from the email that I forwarded over? I just received it, so I forwarded it over. So I do apologize.
Yes, we saw that, and I know Mr. Hicks, why am I not on? Thank you. Yes, we did forward that, and Mr. Hicks looked at that. Part of the questions had to do with some conversations that you're having currently with your budget group, so.
Madam President, members of the board, the comp days, that is part of a budget process right now and is being addressed. And
Okay.
I did respond to
We
these.
did respond.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And I could not forward the email because it only came to me, and so I forwarded to the staff to share the information. So with that being said, I have no other questions. I do appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Vesley.
Oh, President Senator Martinez?
Oh, yes, Mrs. Pengrelli, we thought you disconnected.
No, I'm sorry. I had to step away just for a couple minutes. My apologies. I just had one question, and I think it's been answered, but it's in terms of the car allowances. Is that something we're discussing later on?
So from my understanding, car allowances, they're not part of these contracts. Is that correct?
That's correct. This is just their salary for the upcoming 18-19 school year. There will not be any car allowances until further discussion is had with the board.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so it looks like we're ready for a motion.
I think I made a motion.
Yeah, Kathy made it.
And then a second.
Second.
Mrs. Kinnick made the motion to approve, and Mr. Sandoval second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vesley.
Thank you.
And 8.4, report and discussion on local, state, federal legislative issues and activities.
I'm going to pass that to you again, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the board. Just a quick few little points, and one that's kind of, maybe it's just hot on my list because I sent our representatives, all of our representatives, an email today expressing my opposition to HB 2524, which is allows for the school facilities board to take over the possession of a school and only pay the district 10% of the value of that, which I was very much against. We did have one representative respond and explain his position, why he supports that and why he believes it'll be a better use of public assets in somebody else's hands. It also, if you read the language of the bill, allows for a neighboring adjacent district to take possession of that potentially, which I think is really misplaced in the sense that pitting districts against districts and having property in other districts, and that is really unproductive in that sense. I think only giving 10% of the value is not fair to the taxpayers that are part of the district in that sense. And so I gave a few reasons, but if you have ability and if you believe, I would recommend take hold and send our legislators an email. I know I sent them all today. One did respond, and it was nice to have that open dialogue of allowing me to express my displeasure with that. Just another information, the capital lawsuit, Judge Daniel Martin did deny the claim to delay the lawsuit. He is still looking at the claim to the state has asked for to be completely rejected. He has not ruled on that based on the legal standing basis. I actually don't think he'll rule in favor of that either. I think it will continue to go forward, that the plaintiffs do have a legal standing, and that lawsuit will continue to go forward. There are a few other bills, just random. The gifted funding bill, I think, is a positive one, and so that continues to move forward. It has a mirror bill in it, so it's been both sides. That's about $5 million of additional funding. I think that's a positive thing. There was a strike everything bill on 1154 last week. It was held. It was very bad. It was going into more detail of procurement, putting in extra layers where there doesn't need to be, and adding an additional layer of bureaucracy and penalties, and making personal liability for our buyers if something goes wrong, which is, I think, a bad. And so that was held, so that was positive of having that not going forward. A special ed cost study did pass out of a Senate approach, so that was positive. That is something we've been saying, is that we really need the special ed cost study done to see how much we're not getting funded and what we're spending. There was also, there's a requirement for a bill that require increased information on bond and override pamphlets, and that did pass out of approach. To me, it's just confusing that it's just asking all revenue be put on and included in information in this. It really just gives more information to confuse people in that sense.
To shock them into.
Yeah, I think it could have that effect. It's not from a sense of, hey, we need more bonds and overrides passing in the state. It was, let's add more information probably to, there's an error, this is my personal opinion, that people just don't know what they're voting for, and if we give them more information, I think it confuses a lot of people and doesn't make sense, and so that is a bad thing. And finally, I'll just say, working with Ms. Airy, we had a representative reach out to us asking to tour our schools, and so I think we have a March 9th date for one of our representatives to tour a couple schools, and so we'll lead them on a tour and hopefully show them all the good things they're doing, show them all the good things that we can continue to do if they increase funding, especially on the capital, and restore the district additional assistance, and hopefully he'll appreciate that. But I think we have a tentative March 9th for that. And that's my update.
I have a question. There's a transportation bill that has to do with a funding gap for transportation. How does that affect PUSD?
Madam President, members of the board, there's a few transportation bills out there, but the one that I think you're referring to is we're working with, I don't think it's been modified to our acceptance in a sense that it's to close the gap, meaning to cut district funding over a period of time, but it doesn't allow it to go up if it also goes up. And so we're really working that it should be a two-way street if you want to align it. Yes, if it goes down, let it go down, because right now it does not go down, which will get it more aligned. But if it goes up, you should let it go up. And there are some hard caps in there that are stopping that. And so I have not heard that we have got that bill modified in something that we would be neutral in, that's more fair to allow it to go up and down. Right now, it's just a one-way street. I have personally said I don't like it at all, just because you're trying to fix a little tiny piece of the formula, of which the transportation formula has no correlation to the expenses. So right now we spend $9.3 million on transportation, only getting $7.8 million. We're losing $1.5 million. This could make it that we lose a little bit more in that sense, which really we're not looking at the costs involved with providing transportation. If you look at our special ed, it's continued to grow in that area, and there's really no compensation done to that. So in essence, I think the transportation formula is broken a little bit, and this is a modification to that instead of just fixing the transportation, or in bigger, let's fix the entire funding formula for school finance in that sense. So I don't like it at all, but at least we're trying to work to get it
acceptable that it goes up and down in both areas.
And my last question is about the ELL bill.
The,
The four-hour model has made it through the House, right? To discontinue that?
Madam President, members of the board, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the SEI model that the state
The
implemented
4-hour.
years ago, yeah, the 4-hour mandatory.
They're working on.
And that's,
It's making progress on getting rid of that. So that's a good thing, too.
Yeah. There's a lot of movement this last week. Bills getting passed or failed or being held or being readdressed, so a lot of movement.
Thanks for filling us in.
So, President Martinez,
Mrs. Pangarelli?
can I just ask Mr. Hicks a question? Could you give me the number of the bill, the first one he was talking about?
The first thing that you were talking about, the number of the bill.
Madam President, members of the board, the first one where the SFB would take ownership of a school district that has less than 25% enrollment capacity is HB 2524.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mrs. Linda Palace Thompson, anything else to add to that?
Nothing else, thank you.
And 8.5, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Mr. Sandoval?
Yes, thank you. I actually have a few. One, unfortunately, hasn't made a board meeting yet, but I do want to have a discussion, a presentation around our threat management protocol. And just so I'm clear, and maybe I wasn't clear earlier, what I'm not referring to is crisis management, which is kind of the reactionary process that we go through when something has already occurred. I'm more focused on the proactive approach to mitigating, these types of things that have taken place nationally in the news as recent, but also, other, actions, things that may happen that would put our students, teachers, and staff in an unsafe environment. So more the proactive approach to mitigating those.
Mr. Sandoval, if you don't mind, I'll amend that to formally add that to the strategic plan process for Saturday's conversation.
Mrs. Sayas mentioned we can include that, a piece of it. I'm not sure how much in-depth we can do at that moment, so perhaps you can share with us on Saturday if we've covered what we're looking at within the strategic plan and want to continue adding on a little more.
Yeah, because I would imagine, this protocol is probably somewhat...
So we can't talk about it, but if you guys want to follow on to make sure that we're on tune, but at least it's Thursday, we have time to add it to for Saturday's discussion, so we can start the conversation. So,
We can make that happen.
okay, perfect. So, excellent.
The other item I have is in and around our staffing language. I just want to take a look at what that language states, whether it's, 1 to, I'm making this up, 1 to 20, 1 to, 28, whatever that is, and then how we adapt and adjust, throughout the year.
Are you talking about numbers? Staffing language and numbers?
Teachers to student ratios.
Okay, student ratio, because we do have a policy on that. I second that as well.
Maybe the way to do that is if you could just direct us all to where that information is, where the regulation is in the policy guidelines. It's not a policy, it's a guideline, but maybe you could just share that with us.
We can do that.
That'd be great.
And sorry, I don't know if we can, but in addition, as long as the guideline also defines how we determine what those ratios should be, projections, et cetera. I think there are other factors as well when we take a look at even our Title I schools, et cetera, other variables that would be considered to ensure that those ratios are at a comfortable level. If that's the case, I'm more than willing to go to the website. Thank you. And the last item that I have is really our Title I dollars. As we receive those, I'd like to understand or take a look at each campus and what those dollars look like per campus.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that a report, study session, presentation?
I think that's part of our strategic planning, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Be a long Saturday.
We can make that happen. I'm looking over at Mr. Gay.
Well, since this is about future agendas, and we have a future agenda on Saturday, all of a sudden I got really loud. I would like to recommend that, it's because we only have a half day on Saturday, that we try and stay very focused on the big areas and not get tempted to talk about the details. For example, we may, I can't talk too much.
So I would
just stay in the big areas.
Yes. Feel free to follow up, and the agenda item is pretty broad, so that protects us under open meeting law. It will be here in this room, so.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. That's it for me.
In your suggestion about threat assessment, I would like to have a discussion about the role of social workers in a school district. We were all emailed from Arizona School Boards Association policy advisories, and I just want to make sure that that was on your radar screen. I'm sure that it was funneled to the right people. It's a good service that keeps us from letting things fall through the cracks. And then finally, I've had a conversation, I brought to the attention of Mrs. Pallas Thompson about an opportunity to bring treasures for teachers to the West Valley. And so I'm just requesting, Mrs. Pallas Thompson, that you share that in the next report with my fellow board members. Thank you.
And do we, anybody second to all of them? Doesn't matter. Okay. Mrs. Doan?
I don't have.
Mrs. Pingarelli?
I have none for this evening.
And I have none as well, so I look forward to Saturday.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. 9.1, presentation on budget process. Mr. Hicks.
Madam President, members of the board, it's my honor to be here tonight just to give, I'm not giving, we have Ms. Jackie Munchler as one of our representatives with the budget team. As you know, once a month we try to bring somebody from the budget team just to give a brief little update and just see if there's any questions with the board. I would say that our budget team has been very flossy lately, and they're really hitting everything really good and doing a great job. So I would just like to.
What was that adjective you said? They've been glossy?
Flossy.
Oh, flossy.
Flossy.
Got it. Yeah.
I'm working on some new young and hip words, and that's what I've been told. Our student body presidents today told me that I should use the word flossy tonight. They did show me a dance that goes along with it. I will not be doing the dance.
I was waiting.
Excellent, awesome.
Yes, but flossy. That's a dab.
I know, that's a dab.
Yes.
We could put it on a future agenda item.
No, we would not put that. But so I'd like to introduce Ms. Jackie Munchler for tonight.
Thank you. Governing Board President, members of the board, Linda Pallas Thompson, Mr. Savoy, Mr. Hicks. Okay. Well, I'm pleased to be here tonight to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what some things we've been talking about in our budget committee. We have had some really good conversations going through all of the budget. Some of the things that we've been talking about are the reclassifications, the stipend retention, the legislative updates, and Ken's really good about giving us, updates on that, staffing impacts that it may have with some of the decisions that we make, and of course the governing board, the governor's budget proposal, the $4 million that he's holding at bay. So we've talked a little bit about that and what that would look like, spreading that out with salaries and things like that. So again, it's been a lot of good conversation, and especially this last week, we had a lot of good conversation in the committee about where things are going, if the budget is approved, and how it would look for the district. That's really all I have. Our next meeting is March 6th. We do have a good group of, I think, members in the budget committee, a good representation. So a lot of good discussion has come from those groups. Any questions?
Thank you for your time spent.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
I would agree. Thank you so much. Mrs. Pangarelli, any questions? She must have stepped away. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to 9.2, District Budget Report for the month of December. Okay, all information is available online. Next, 9.3, Budget Facilities Planning and Construction Report. Also available online. District Enrollment Report, 9.4, for the month of January 2018. Also available online. And 9.5, Report on Upcoming Meetings and Events.
'Tis the season.
A lot of things coming forward. I just want to highlight, again, March 14th, the patron tour. Any other items, governing board members, you would like to highlight? All right. Again, that is available online. 9.6, draft agenda item for March 15th. This is bare bones. After Saturday, it will be full. And number 10, would anybody like to address any discussion agenda items from the list? All right.
So, sorry.
Mr. Sandoval.
President Saya Martinez, I would like to, if it's okay, very briefly go back to 8.5, which is the request for any items for a future governing board meeting. I want to be clear on the items that I've brought forth. If the staffing language is online, more than happy to look at that and then ask further questions after doing that research. The Title I funding, being part of a strategic session, it is what it is. The funding, we get it based on certain variables, and how it's spent is very, very clear, right? So I'm just, how that sits in a strategic session, I'm not sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong lens, but I just want to understand, each campus's line item as a result to those dollars, and what, variables that we're considering, how we're using them.
That sounds like study session material to me.
In a future study session.
Future study session.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha.
Correct.
Okay.
Anything else anybody would like to address?
No, thank you for that. I just wanted to establish some clarity there.
That's a roll up our sleeves thing, don't you?
Okay, yeah, great.
Okay, then that brings us to adjournment.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second. Meeting adjourned at 8:32. Oh, we have to vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Passes 5-1. All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.